unless I go to the army. Hey all, Choiboy here. Welcome to another video. Today I want to talk about something random. So I've been going through the list of topics I want to talk about on YouTube, and maybe this one was a pretty mild, nice one that doesn't sound too retarded. I've been recently thinking about what topics I should be talking about on this YouTube channel, because I don't make that much videos on this YouTube channel anymore because I don't get to travel that much. I started thinking about, would this topic make me look like a retard, or would it reduce the chances of me finding a girlfriend in the future?
Maybe.
Okay, I'm just joking. I'm not going to the Korean army. I just needed a clickbait title. Enjoy! Wow! Today's topic is about why I feel more Korean over time, even though when I gave up my Korean citizenship last year. So, I just turned 25 this year, and I think when you turn 24 in Korea, that's the last year you can kind of give up your Korean citizenship if you are living overseas, etc. Because I had my New Zealand citizenship, and I don't think a dual citizenship works with Korea and New Zealand unless I go to the army. Wow. I had to make a choice of if I travel to Korea and if I get a call from the army, then I'll have to go to the army and just give up my friends and families and my job here. I wouldn't say waste, but spend 1.5 years in Korea, protecting Korea, which I would be okay with if I lived in Korea, but not when I spent 90% of my life in New Zealand. The second option is for me to drop my Korean citizenship and just live as a Kiwi, as a New Zealander. So I guess I chose the latter because it was a bit easier to go about. Spending 1.5 years back in Korea in the army, where is very hierarchical and all that kind of stuff, it didn't really appeal to me because I really like my flat structure kind of thing here in New Zealand. Everything's a bit flat. When you're talking to an adult or a kid, you talk the same. You can be expressive here. Korea is a bit more conservative in terms of expression and how you talk to people, and just the tradition itself. The culture is very conservative. The culture has been changing in Korea, for what I can see. It's not so traditional as it used to be, like my parents' kind of times, but it's still not really my type. So I don't think I'll ever live in Korea, but I would love to travel around Korea. That's kind of just it. So there was no real good reason for me to go to the army. So I dropped my Korean citizenship, and it makes it easier for me to travel around Korea as a foreigner. But if I had thoughts about living in Korea and working in Korea in the future, maybe I would have went to the army. And that's what a lot of people do when they're not sure if they're going to stay overseas or if they're eventually going to come back into Korea in their 20s or 30s. Then they normally go to the army just in case they do have to come back. Now, the lifestyle I want is definitely more on the Western side than the Asian side. So I guess, does that make me really Kiwi? Sure, I guess, in a sense. But I guess this is where the identity crisis kind of kicks in, because I don't know if I'm more Korean or Kiwi. I feel more Korean over time, I think. Like, I can see myself thinking more like a Korean over time as I get older. But also I do like the Korean way of, hanging out. I don't know what that actually means, but like a good example might be that when I'm speaking Korean, I do feel like I'm myself a bit more. I can express myself more. Like, it's in the blood, right? Like, even though I hold a New Zealand passport, my blood is still Korean. And I'm pretty fluent in Korean in a sense. Like, not the best, but it's okay. I can write, I can read, I can talk in Korean pretty fluently. And I love DMCs in Korean and things like that. I guess it's really confusing of if I am more Kiwi and Korean because of these things. Because as I mentioned, I don't think I'll want to live in Korea because of the, working culture, for example. But, how they hang out and socialize is totally cool. I'm pretty fine with that. Like, there is like another thing that I kind of like about Korea is something called jong. I don't know what jong is in English, but it's kind of like this kind of connection in a sense. It's like, I don't know, like, see, Korean is so interesting. Like, there's a lot of words that I just cannot explain in English. Like, it's pretty hard to explain in Korean as well, but it's like a connection, right? Like, you say, like, when you break up with your girlfriend, you can't forget about them because of the jong you have, or something like that. It's like that kind of context. It can work in relationships, friendships, family, or even your colleagues. You can use it in a whole variety of kind of social situations. And I guess, yeah, let's call it spiritual connection. Let's say spiritual connection sounds like religious. It's not religious though. It's, I don't know, it's a culture. It's a cultural thing, let's say. But I got a bit of that. Like, it feels like the Western culture is a bit more, focused on myself and my family, where, I don't know, Koreans like to be a bit more open. Like, they like to, no, that's, okay, so if I say that, that makes me feel that I am mocking Western people, saying they're selfish. That's not really the case. But, like, there's a sense of feeling that you care more about others in Korea. Like, that's how I feel. And, I really like that kind of stuff. I am normally quite focused on my surrounding people, whether they're my family or friends, or even my colleagues, or even sometimes people on the streets. Okay, this is getting a bit weird as I say it, so I'm going to move on from this. But anyways, but another thing, I've been watching a lot of YouTube lately. You can't do much else in lockdown. Like, yeah, it's pretty boring. But I've been watching a lot of YouTube. I realized that Korean Americans, for example, they normally say, oh, I'm American. They don't say I'm Korean. And sometimes they don't feel proud as a Korean, like ethnicity wise. And, for me, it's a bit different. I'm not saying everyone's like that, but for me, when I introduce myself, I say I'm Korean, but I live in New Zealand, kind of thing. I don't say I'm Kiwi normally. Like, I say I have Kiwi traits and, I embrace Kiwi culture, but I'm not Kiwi. Like, even though my passport says I'm Kiwi, I'm not Kiwi. Is I identify myself more as a Korean than a Kiwi. And it makes more sense. But, I'm fluent in both languages. I'm a 1.5 generation, right? And this is where the kind of crisis comes. Kiwi or Korean, maybe both, or maybe not even both. I'm not sure. Like, are we a new kind of, I don't know, culture? Like, it's so many things, right? Like, whatever cultural trait represents me, it would be either Korean or Kiwi. But I take in, just the good things of each culture and I kind of embrace those. So it's really hard to say, but definitely I do feel more Korean and I'm proud to be Korean. And yeah, I guess that's like how I feel regardless of my passport.
Korea represent.
It's very different between a lot of different 1.5 generation and second generation immigrants. Sometimes you might feel more Kiwi or you might feel more Korean, in my case. And I guess I've met so many different types of people that introduce themselves as Kiwi or Korean, and that's all fine. And, there's plenty of people who can't speak their mother language as well, which is totally fine as well. I guess everyone has their own values and, if you're happy not being fluent in Korean, that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong about that. But I guess it is something I've been thinking about lately because I've been thinking a bit into the future of what would I want to identify myself as. It's like there has been a lot of crises within the past several years of who I really am, culturally or even personality wise. There's a lot of things that kind of comes into play, but it's just something I've been thinking about. And I've been having this kind of talk with other people as well, other friends and some colleagues as well, and there has been a variety of answers and they go from one end of a scale to the other side. So it's been pretty interesting to hear people's story about it as well. And like, there's no conclusion to this. I just wanted to talk about it and maybe hopefully you can have a think about it. It's quite an interesting thing. I really like, cultural kind of differences and similarities and sharing these kind of things with other people as well. So yeah, I don't know. These are the kind of things I like to talk about when I'm just chatting with my friends, colleagues. It's a good icebreaker in a sense. Like, some people might be a bit sensitive about it because they don't want to talk about it. That's totally fine as well. But, I think it's something we should all openly talk about because it's important. I think it's important. There's a lot of people that feel like they belong nowhere because they don't feel either Kiwi or Korean. To wrap it up, I think it's really important to understand what you are and what you identify yourself as. And like, it's a very good topic to kind of have a think about. I really don't know what I'm talking about today, but hope you enjoyed it. Give me some topics to talk about. Like, I want a lot of good topics to talk about. Like, maybe I want to do like a Q&A. I'm kind of running out of ideas because if it's too retarded, I can't talk about it because I don't want to leave history of myself, talk about stupid topics. But it's quite limited on the number of topics I can come up with myself. So do help me out on that. Hope you guys are all staying safe during lockdown. We're not too far from, green light in New Zealand if you're here. So let's keep at it, get the vaccination rates up, and yeah, enjoy our Christmas, hopefully in a month's time. If you like today's video, give it a thumbs up, put a comment down below of the topic I talked about today. Anything you want to tell me, topics to talk about in the future, or let me know down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because it's illegal to watch without subscribing, in my laws of course. Put the bell notification for my next videos because you don't know when it's going to come out. I don't post regularly on this channel yet, but hopefully I will in the future. I'm not sure, just depends on how much time I have. But yeah, hope I come up with a better topic next time that is a bit more defined. But anyways, until next time, I will catch you around. See ya.